Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good morning.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Doing fine.
Monday morning.
Ready to solve the problems of the world.
Yeah, it's getting harder.
And it looks like over the years we've had a lot of problems. Many times it's created by the government. So when people see that we have problems, they turn the problems over to the government. And Mises said every time they write a regulation or attempt to do something, they create two new problems. I think that's a pretty good example of what's been going on with all the edicts that are coming out now, trying to make a safer democracy and safe for the world and bring about peace and prosperity. But it is a mess. But I want to start off with before we get into the nitty-gritties about how they're stealing our liberties and what's happening on the coronavirus, because there is so much going on.
Yeah.
But, over the years, I have talked to a lot of crowds, mostly young people, that would get very interested. They're fascinated with this whole concept of individual liberty and responsibility, more so than most people realize. But usually at the end, so often an individual would ask me the question, so what do we do about this? How can we handle this? Well, how should we invest our money? What's important? And I would tell them that, there's a lot of things you can do because things will get tough. And things are tough now. How do you survive it? How do you survive the government? And, I gave them hints as to how people have, especially in the 70s, how they prepared. They would have, make plans. But overall, it was stay out of debt, have some savings, protect yourself. If you can have a house, pay it off, and just very practical things, property. And they understood that pretty well. But and then I'd always say that that in itself won't solve the problems because you have to invest in something else. Because if you don't have stuff to take care of you, that's one thing. But more importantly than having stuff to protect you in an emergency is the ability to live in a free society.
Yeah.
And I have such strong beliefs that if we maintain our freedoms, that we can get back on our feet rather quickly, which means that we can keep what we earn, we have an incentive to what we earn, we assume the responsibilities of it. And right now, today, unfortunately, not enough people have planned too much debt and too much dependency on government, and we have this mess. So this will take a while now to correct the mistakes, and I know there's a lot of people very, very worried, about the coronavirus. And I want to just take a quick minute to thank all the people who have inquired about my son, Rand, because they've had honest concerns. But he's doing fine. He doesn't have symptoms. I don't think he's going to get symptoms, but you never know. And it sometimes raises some questions about just how this has all come about, because it annoyed him and our family how viciously he attacked, because he didn't agree with the solutions that they were presenting. But anyway, thank you very much for expressing your concerns. He's doing fine, and I have confidence that he'll do quite all right.
Yeah, it is a big concern. But, it's, again, as you say, the concern about the solution or the prescription may be worse than the disease in some ways. I was just reading 1 in 3 Americans are ordered to stay inside their house. And, of course, if you're worried about catching a virus, that's the worst thing possible, especially when the sun's coming out and fresh air. What they're telling Americans to do is going to make it a lot worse. I went toward Houston this weekend, and it was like a ghost town. Yeah. There's no business going on. Churches are all, except for one, churches are all closed. People are getting laid off, people we know getting laid off. And so you wonder, really, is this the way to approach it?
Right. You and I have just talked, and we believe there may be hopeful signs that things are turning around. When the sun cuts out at bright in a month, I'm one that leans toward optimism. If anybody wants to really keep up with that and nutrition and protecting oneself and protecting their health, they ought to look into Dr. Bill Sardi.
Yeah.
And he's frequently on Lou Rockwell's site. But I think he has a good grasp of this, and it's a lot of vitamins and vitamin D and building up our immune system. And it is true, people that don't have a good immune system are the ones that that are in trouble now. But I want to start off also with a long quote, and I'm going to have it put up on the screen. It's from Tom DiLorenzo, a friend of ours who teaches economics at Loyola College in Baltimore, Maryland. So he I think summarizes this very well, because he talks about the problems they face in Italy. Unfortunately, I can't read that small print on the screen, but I think I can get it from here. Okay, he writes, this is from Tom DiLorenzo, and he first starts off by, the CDC says that 23,000 Americans have died from influenza since last September. But and then he adds, ho hum, who cared? Who even reported it?
Yeah.
We have serious things to consider. And of course, the serious things in the overtreatment is pretty bad. And he said, around 6 p.m. today, it must have been yesterday or the day before, the TV news cited another CDC statistic that 400 Americans have died from the coronavirus. From my viewpoint, that's horrible. Emergency, suspend the Constitution, permanent declare martial law, stop the economy, now stay in the house or else, shut up and take your master's orders, rev up the printing presses, imprison and dissenters. That's what we're getting. But here, then he goes on. Now this is the paragraph you pay attention to. Here's another interesting tidbit. The Italian version of the CDC says that just under 50% of those who had died, 50% of those who have died from the coronavirus had at least 3 pre-existing diseases such as cancer, heart disease, lung disease. The average age of such Italian disease victims is 80%. Around 20% had at least 2. Nevertheless, they are claiming that they all died from coronavirus alone. And yet the number he comes up with, the people that actually did, is less than 1%, 0.8% who died from the coronavirus had no pre-existing serious condition. So you know what kind of feedback we'll get from this. We'll get hit hard. You don't care. You don't know what it's much, much worse. But then you can get all these statistics, whether it's deaths on the highway or tuberculosis or influenza, and this is really pretty minor, but I do believe the fear-mongering has created these near riots, and riots at time of people stripping the stores clean. I mean, I think history is going to show that this is another one of these irrational breakout from fear, and that is the thing on the toilet paper. That has to be the most bizarre thing in the world. All of a sudden, the toilet paper is gone, and I do think that most of that was preventable, and it was created out of who knows what the motivations were, whether it was stupidity or what, but it's way out of proportion. Because when you look at this, we shouldn't be rioting in the streets, when we know that people do die from this, but people are dying at much higher rate, 4,000 people a month on automobiles, but that's the way it works. So we'd like to work on trying to get this in a proper perspective, and what will help us, and I do believe it's going to come, and that is the fact that we're going to see some improvements in these statistics where they won't even be able to deny it. I want to see some improvement on the government reaction to calm down, the hysteria that so many of our government officials have created. And I think Gauci, the doctor from CDC,
yeah.
He needs to be removed from office, because I think he is, and there's some pretty good evidence that his statements have incited more radicalism and fear and just caused havoc by him speaking out and being the spokesman on it, because it's not like what he says. He has overstated it, and people generally don't get sick from this unless they're already sick from something else.
And speaking of Fauci and what he said, you were slammed for your column last week because you said there doesn't seem any basis for him saying it's 10 times more deadly than the flu at the time. And remember, PolitiFact, some guy from PolitiFact, that's not true. This, of course, they're funded by Soros and Koch. PolitiFact is, that's not true, Ron Paul's lying. Well, guess what? The numbers are coming out and it shows that actually you're not lying at all. It's not 10 times stronger. But manipulating the numbers was what it's all about, because it's all about fueling hysteria. The media is so irresponsible. They take the absolute worst possible case scenario, theoretically scenario, and then they run it as if it's a fact. And then we all say, well, thank goodness we've got the internet, because we can refute all of these media lies. But then all of a sudden, dissent is being stripped from the internet, Twitter, Facebook, and then they're stripping anyone who's questioning this. In fact, there was a great article up on Medium. A guy was doing analysis using the government's own numbers and questioning some of the conclusions, and Medium took the whole thing off, stripped it out so people couldn't even read it and decide for themselves. So this is the real danger. But, cooking the books and manipulating the numbers is really what's critical to fueling the hysteria. One of the things that's interesting that I noticed over the weekend, Spain and Germany have very similar numbers of infections, 33,000 in Spain and 28,000 in Germany. But Spain has 4,321 deaths. Germany has 115 deaths. It's impossible that this is just somehow, there's some kind of German thing. So it's the way, like we saw with Italy with Di Lorenzo, anyone who dies and after they're dead, they get tested and have a marker for this virus, Corona killed them. Even if you're 98 years old, you can't breathe, you've been in the hospital for a month, you're on death's door, and you die, and then they attribute it to it. So that's what they're doing, and that's what's terrifying people, and it's making people angry, not at the people cooking the books, but at people like you who are saying, hang on a minute.
Well, we're back to doing something that our government did and the people allowed to happen after 9/11 by passing the Patriot Act, which is an ongoing fight because it hasn't been settled yet for its renewal. In a couple of months, it's going to be re-voted on again. But we're doing the same thing, and that is Bill Barr, our Attorney General, which a lot of conservatives, a few libertarians had held out some hope that he would help straighten this mess out. But now it is the authority to put people in prison without any habeas corpus. Any judge can do this, and the Congress is with them. The Congress are willing. They have to go and get this law passed. Of course, they probably don't even need the law passed because the way they act, they do what they want anyway. So the Justice Department is not cleaned up yet. And right now, some of these suggestions are monolithic. It's going to affect all of us. It's a principle that you have no rights to even talk to a judge before they can put you away indefinitely because you're stirring up trouble. You said the wrong thing, and you said your language has been incinerated, and that is on the internet, and they close you down because they say, oh no, that's private. Yeah, social media and government have a pretty good alliance.
Yeah, and they'll say, oh well, this is a temporary measure. What's wrong with you, Ron Paul? We have to fight this virus. Yeah, the Patriot Act was a temporary measure after 9/11, as you pointed out. The 2001 authorization for the use of military force. Well, this is just in response to the attack, and it's been used how many times anywhere we want to attack. So, a little bit of word to the wise. This is going to be used and manipulated, and when people start getting thrown in jail indefinitely, it's much worse than after 9/11. But the hysteria and the anger does remind me of the period of 2002, 2003, running up into the Iraq War. If you remember, you were the target of a lot of that back then when you were suspicious. I really don't think they're telling us the truth about Saddam Hussein and his weapons of mass destruction. Oh, Ron Paul, you just love Saddam. You want everyone to die. That was the same kind of feeling there is now. There's so many people. I mean, I'm surprised that people even commenting on our program who I don't recognize as commenters, it must be new, they take all the effort to come on to the program's comment section and say, I hope you get it and I hope you die and I hope your son dies. I mean, what is wrong with people?
There's something seriously wrong. Well, the Fed wanted to get the market settled today because the stocks keep going down, and they came in with a big announcement. Unlimited QE. No limitation to $1 trillion or something. It's unlimited, whatever they need. And the Congress are urged to pass a $1.8 or $2 trillion worth of spending. But Pelosi is holding it up. And guess what her reason is? It isn't because of the money. See, that's how Rand got into trouble. He thought they should cut someplace to pay for some of this. But she's holding it up. And this, to me, is nauseating, because the whole purpose is that she wanted to make sure that there was direct money available going around the Hyde Amendment for doing abortions in the third trimester. And that was the reason. And they're real worried about coronaviruses, and this to me is really bad. But this morning when the Fed came through with this announcement, gold went up and the markets looked good and the stocks were up sharply, 500 points. And I was just walking around the room and I had the business station on. I watched the numbers. And I looked over and said, they got their numbers all mixed up. Within just like that, it went down 1,000 points. It was down 500 instead, and it was up 500. So they said the explanation was there that somebody in the Federal Reserve said these funds are unlimited, and of course that's what they've been working on for years. But right now they're at the end of their rope. The dollar. I like to think about the inverted pyramid, that more logical reserves, the dollars and gold and things like that, would be the last thing to crumble. And Treasury bills, they've loved Treasury bills, a little less so now, but they also think cash is good. People have to have cash because everybody depends on the dollar. So the dollar has actually gone up in the last couple of weeks. And if you look at that, it's sort of like the argument about the stock market. When it was with 10,000 was going to 20,000. No, you can't do that. Oh yeah, and everybody pumped it up, and the Fed fed into it, and they get it up there, and it's different this time. Well, it was different because it was much worse, much worse than ever. So now this is what they're doing now. They're saying that unlimited cash for everybody. I think they are determined, and they will make a feeble effort at putting cash into hands of individuals and small businesses, not just the big corporation. Well, just mechanically, that's hard to do, but it won't solve the problem. They think cash and Federal Reserve notes and computer entries actually have something to do with wealth. Yeah. It has nothing to do with wealth other than the fact that it undermines wealth and gives somebody a temporary benefit to steal some wealth from another. Like, if the banks get bailed out, yeah, they get some benefits there. But ultimately, the Federal Reserve note, these computer chips, are going to be worthless if they don't change their tune, but they're not going to change their tune because the market is so powerful. It is demanding deflation, which they haven't achieved, and also the decrease in prices and elimination of debt, get rid of the bankruptcies, and all these things. Politically, it is not going to happen until this crisis continues to go on. So we have this crisis, the financial crisis, then we have this determination to take away all our civil liberties dealing with the coronavirus. So the combination isn't good. And what is to me so discouraging is that the answers are known. It's sort of like trying to talk somebody into going through with their surgery for cancer because your surgery is going to save your life. Well, I don't want to have a hangover or something. I don't want to be sore. But so they do not and will not take the medicine. In the old days, when the dollar was limping along, but this is the climactic end to the fiat dollar, which became totally fiat in 1971. It's a predictable event. Nobody should be surprised. And the Austrian economists essentially all had it right in predicting this and understanding it. But how many Austrian economists do they put on TV to explain this? Yeah. Zero. I mean, the only time they'll put an Austrian on is to sort of poke fun at them. Oh, you guys scaremongering. Yeah. The Austrian economists are scaremongering because they tell the truth. And people that are radicalizing the whole country and the whole world over a virus is not nearly as deadly as they pretend it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And, people are furious with people like Rand and others who are a little bit cautious about this bailout. They think, we want our money. They don't realize they're going to get a tiny check. They're going to get some crumbs. And the billions are going to go to the airlines to do it, all the stock buybacks. All the well-connected people are going to get the billions. So, it really is unfortunate. But I think the end is going to be, because I was just reading there are going to be hundreds of thousands of U.S. cases of coronavirus that will remain undiagnosed. And that means they're not part of the statistics. And that's about like what happens with the flu, and we talked about this last week. 22,000 dead this past flu season, 220,000 diagnosed. Well, that would be a 10% death rate. But the CDC says, no. We estimate 32 million people had the flu. They just didn't get diagnosed. And so that's going to be the end of this. It's going to be a similar trajectory with maybe even a lower death rate, morbidity rate. Who knows? But I would just say one thing Dr. Paul pointed out earlier. They want to start rounding up people and putting them in jail. So it's pretty scary. And we also, we understand that there's a lot of pressure on social media. Actually, a couple of Dr. Paul's more important videos have been demonetized, even though he's telling the truth. So it's important that we're able to connect with you and keep in touch with you. So I would ask you, and there's a link in the description, go to the Ron Paul Institute website, ronpaulinstitute.org, and just subscribe to free notices, free updates from us. We do not sell, rent, give your name away to anyone. We absolutely protect your privacy, but we would like to be able to communicate with you regardless of what may happen to us in the end. So, and thank you very much for watching us and continuing to watch us in ever greater numbers.
Very good. I'm going to close with just a little statement about a book I read many years ago. It was written in 1841 by Charles Mackay, and he had a book, Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. Enticing title. And his book, written way back then, went over all the times that they had these booms and busts, and the coronavirus is one of those. But he talked about the South Sea bubble, and then the bursting, and then also the tulip mania. And I believe his training had been in psychology, so it was the way people reacted. But his most famous quote from that book I find fascinating, because he said that, men, it has been said, think in herds, easy to believe, that it will be seen that they will go mad in herds. I think we might be witnessing that right now. While they only, that is us, while they only retrieve their while the only recover their senses slow. We only recover our senses one by one, and I think it's a driver. Herd thinking, get into trouble. Herd thinking and fear and mongering, and then waking up. But one by one, that's what we try to do. And that's the only way you can do it. One by one, get people, and the message spreads. But it will go. It's hard to do it as quickly as getting fear mongering going and keeping people so scared and frightened. But this is achievable. We do understand that the knowledge is there, and it is based on the principles of liberty and protection of liberty, and the fact that we are now threatened with imprisonment for speaking out. Our First Amendment rights are in jeopardy, and also our rights of habeas corpus, which has been around for a long time, it is being challenged too. But we have to wake up as many people as possible, as quickly as we can, to let them know that there have been some traditions in this country that have been very well known that protects liberty, and if we protect liberty, we will also protect prosperity. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.